we are still talking about the Mediterranean, the MENA region, and the challenges on the economics and the relation between the security situation and the improvement of the economy situation. And actually, we heard some words about there is still some pessimism, but I would ask to Mr. Bergamini, and first of all, thank you for being with us. If you can give us your perspective about your company and how has been the last, I would say, year, because after COVID, we saw indeed some signs of improvement.
It's correct. It's correct. Thank you so much first for the question and the opportunity. Yes, very challenging times, very demanding. This pandemic's challenged the economy of the world since more than a year now, and it's challenging the economy of the Mediterranean region. It's challenging all the companies, in particular shipping companies also. Especially also because now COVID was a very strong and tough, brutal reminder about the strategic characteristic of the supply chains. All is about supply chain now. It's not even me or our company which is saying that. This year, the G7 summit, it was the first time since the G7 exists that the leaders at their annual summit were mentioning supply chains. It was the very first time in the history of G7, once again, that you had not in each paragraph, but something about the strategic aspects of the supply chains. Supply chain needs to be holistic, resilient, etc., etc. So yes, and it has been ending, as I was just saying you, because I will give you three examples. Congestion in the ports, not only in the Mediterranean region, of course, but from Asia to North America. Supply chain congestion has been caused and is still caused by unprecedented surge of imports in the US, but also in European markets or elsewhere in the world. US congestion, it's a big challenge for us, and it has impacted all the activities of the shipping companies. Vaccination of the seafarers. Also, of course, vaccination is a challenge for all the governments of the countries of the planet, but also for seafarers, who are pivotal, who are really essential staff for keeping supply chain efficiency. And also, still talking about the challenges that we are facing, the cargo crunch, what we call in my job, in my profession, a cargo crunch. We have to know that there are not enough vessels and containers on the planet to satisfy the demand. I was talking about the surge of imports. There are not enough vessels, so it has been complicated also to find all the vessels, even if we're talking about massive, gigantic vessels for the world leaders that we are, but also containers. Just for the anecdote, which is not an anecdote, we have to know that before COVID, there were only 2 companies all over the world which were able to produce containers. So very scarce resources. Nevertheless, to finish my answer to the question, we have been good as usual. CMA-CGM is a very, as the other European leader in companies in shipping industry, who are very solid, very resilient, and who have succeeded to overcome all these challenges. The business is very strong. Last week I was reading an article from a think tank in Washington, Middle East Institute, very famous one in Washington, saying that CMA-CGM is playing a central role in the Mediterranean, which is true. From Morocco to Malta, from Egypt to Turkey, from Greece to France, of course, in Marseille, where we have our head office historically, Lebanon also, despite the very, very particular times and the big crisis which is hitting Lebanon now. You know, our company has its roots, its origins in Lebanon. So we see that this is a pivotal region with a strategic company at very challenging times. We are serving in 160 countries, 110,000 staff, and we have close to 20% of our staff working in the Mediterranean regions on various countries of the Mediterranean Sea. So very challenging, but we are doing the job.
So you mentioned the pivotal region, you're based in France. We've been talking also about the role of Europe in this context. So the challenges you mentioned, but also we heard during the panel about the kind of lack of presence, or actually even more clear and blatant. Europe was absent during this situation, during this crisis in a way. So if on the economical point of view, despite some challenges, the situation kind of improved, we saw, or some of our speakers say, we could see some lack of presence of Europe. Do you agree with this opinion that if we look at the Mediterranean, not only as an economic opportunity, but also as a strategic field, Europe has been, at least recently, absent?
No, I disagree. I disagree for various reasons. First, because as a former French diplomat, I'm pro-European. I'm European, deeply convinced myself, under the EU flag for many years. And Europe and its actions all over the planet in various sectors has always been criticized because Europe is a journey. Of course, nothing is perfect, but nobody says it to be easy or perfect. When we talk about security threats, when we talk about crisis in the Mediterranean region, and the capacity of the European capitals and European Union to answer, to provide solutions and crisis solution, what are we talking about exactly? Are we talking about hard security, soft security? Is the situation of today worse than it was yesterday, better than the situation of tomorrow? When is yesterday, when is tomorrow? We don't know, short, medium, long term, all that is maybe not facilitating the answer, but first, it's true that we have to think in terms of neighborhood. We know from my previous life, my previous career, when I was working with the first EU chief diplomacy, Javier Solana, a long time ago, we know that if you want to have an impact, a local impact, you need to think globally, and vice versa. If you want to be a global player, you need also to be able to have a stabilized neighborhood. This is all the narrative about what Europe is trying to do since more than 20 years and even further, since Amsterdam Treaty. Once again, is it perfect? Is it enough? I don't know, but when you ask a question that if Europe and European companies have a role to play or are able to play, I will give you two examples. Economic development and political stability. You cannot have political stability without economic development. But we know also, and I've seen that physically in my previous posting abroad on the southern shore, political transition is all about freedom of expression, free and fair elections, good governance, accountability. And this is fundamental when this is in the making and when this is successful, even if the journey is a bit bumpy with up and down, like a roller coaster. But political transition without economic transition, at the end of the day, it doesn't work. You cannot have a proper transition being able to faire bouger les lignes towards more democracy, more accountability, better governance, if you don't have these transitions, political and economic transition. Who better than Europeans and European companies with their values are better placed to promote these values for economic development and stability in the southern neighborhood? Who else? Second anecdote, I was mentioning soft and hard security. If I talk about human security, we have to talk about green, climate action. We have to play together, north and south, in the Mediterranean and Middle East region, in Mare Nostrum. We have to play collectively, this is obvious, to fight against climate change. And if you take the shipping companies like CMA CGM, this is a very strong stance that we have taken with massive investments since almost 10 years now. And for the very first time, some green vessels, containers vessels, since more than a year now, propelled with LNG, with a substantial reduction of gas emission, but also doing well in terms of submarine biodiversity, we have opened this new field and playing for decarbonation for the maritime transport, which is once again strategic and pivotal. And we are very, very pleased now that the other European companies, European carriers are following that journey, like the German company APAC, the Italo-Swiss company, Mediterranean Ship and Company, Maersk, the Danish company, has just today announced also that is ready by 24 to move forward with a neutral vessel, with new technology. So the top 5 on the world leaders of maritime industry, maritime transportation, the 5 biggest companies, 4 are Europeans. So when you have the 4 maritime companies which have decided to move forward and to really work in a very in good intelligence and with strategic dialogue, for instance, with the European Union Commission, with its Vice Prime President, Mr. Frans Timmermans. And this is complex, this is complicated, it imposes massive investment, but this is very important also, once again, to improve security and the future of Mediterranean. We move from immigration, terrorism, that kind of hard security threats, to other commitments for which the future of the region will depend on the capability of Europeans, Europe and European companies to be able to play collectively, to move forward. That's my personal assumption.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bergamini, for being with us, for sharing your thoughts. And we really touch different perspectives on the Mediterranean from your point of view. We heard previously some other speakers touching issues related more to security and to the security in the region and with the economics. So it's really complicated topics. We try to summarize it, and we really got to different points. So I really appreciate you being with us.